And that's where our love for our kids translates into fear when we see all they're dealing with and, things they're doing, and you're wondering, are horrible things happen to my child? And they are often. And then we kind of translate that into an anger and control, not because we're horrible people, because we're terrified and we didn't get training.
Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hi there. Thanks for joining us for an insightful conversation about your favorite subject and ours, teenagers. Woo! Hey, before we hop in, would you just take a moment to leave a rating or a review and let us know how we're bringing value to you? And that's going to help other people decide if the show's worth their investment of time and energy. So just scroll down to the rating section of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite listening app is, and give us your feedback. Okay. Are you ready, honey? Should we jump in?
Yep, let's do that.
Awesome.
If you're a parent or a step-parent to an adolescent or teen, you already know how these turbulent teen years can be. For a parent, this is often a confusing and frustrating and difficult a season, right? It probably seems that your child has changed overnight into someone you no longer recognize. I know that was the case for us.
For sure.
You might be dealing with emotional explosions and mood swings and unpredictable behaviors. That sweet little child that idolized you just a few years ago is now pushing you away.
That's right. During those teen years, kids are struggling to find their own identity and striving for independence and autonomy apart from us as parents. Now, this is actually a normal stage of development, but it often creates a lot of tension and relational disconnection. And as parents and step-parents, it's common to feel like the teenager living in your home has absolutely no respect for you.
Right.
They don't listen, they question everything, they're resistant, sometimes even rebelling against your best parenting efforts. They might shut you out and act like they're totally capable of just managing their own life. But the truth is, they actually still need you.
They do. So what do you do when faced with these kind of challenges, especially in today's world of invasive technology, social pressures, cyberbullying, addiction, desensitization, aggression, and destructive cultural influences? It's all around us. It seems to be a perfect recipe for anxiety, stress, and depression for our teens. And that might leave you wondering how you'll survive this season.
Maybe you've realized that navigating your own personal teen years, that was a very different time than what your teen is experiencing today.
Right.
The world has changed, and our parenting approach must also change in order to meet our kids right where they are and guide them through the good, the bad, and the ugly struggles of life at this messy stage of development.
Right.
If you've got an adolescent about to hit their teen years, or you're already frustrated with a teen and you're wondering how you're ever going to survive getting them to adulthood with everyone intact, I'm excited because this is the episode for you.
That's right. We've got a very special guest, Dr. Michael Bradley, with us today. And Dr. Mike, he's a clinical psychologist, a leading expert of adolescent behavior, and the author of several best-selling books that focus on saving today's overwhelmed teens with love, laughter, and the science of resilience.
Yeah.
As a therapist, Dr. Mike has been working with teens and their parents for over 30 years. We're big fans of his book titled Crazy Stressed, and we're so excited to have him join us here on the show.
Absolutely. So let's dive into our conversation with Dr. Mike for some practical advice, valuable insight, and hope. You need some hope that you can love and support your teenager while facing the challenges of these turbulent years and get through them together.
Right.
So here we go.
Well, hello, Dr. Mike. We're so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Sure.
Thank you so much. That's my pleasure.
I am a big fan. I'm a new fan. I just discovered you, but I'm a big fan of your book, Crazy Stressed. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the show, because this book is amazing. And it's just every parent needs to read this book, I believe. I think it's a game changer, especially if you've got adolescents or teenagers.
Right.
Or you're preparing for your kids to become that age.
They will get there.
Yes.
I appreciate that, but understand that I just collect this stuff and write it down. So what you're reading and hearing is the end product of over 30 years of parents' pain and then ultimate wisdom. And I say, wow, this stuff should go to every parent. And that's what you're seeing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So it's organized in 3 very distinct parts. The first part is all about the anti-adolescent resilience conspiracy.
Oh, yes.
The second part is strategies and tactics, which are amazing. And then the third part are common resilience parenting challenges, which kind of breaks down the do's and don'ts. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more. You kind of just shared with us, but a little bit more of what motivated you to write this book.
Well, it was 2 primary things. One is just dealing with parents. I'm ex-military, so I use a lot of military metaphor. And by the way, it's a fair metaphor when you're dealing with adolescents when things get bad, as you guys, I think, know. But in any event, just seeing a lot of ashen-faced veteran parents walking in the door, stunned, just can't believe that things are so bad, or they think they're so bad as they are, thinking that because they love their kids and they grew up pretty good and their parents were good people, that, hey, no problem being a parent, right? Any fool can do this. And they fall into the trap of thinking they know how to parent in this day and age, and also thinking they know what it's like to be a teenager in this day and age. And none of us do. Every day kids come in and stun me with some new thing going on. I'm in the business and things change at light year speed. So in the military, we say, beware fighting the new war with the rules of the past one. You have to go in and relearn. In the military, talk about learning the culture, the terrain, the weather, a million different things before you think about, is this a good idea or not? You have to have that preparation, and then you develop the strategies and tactics. So often parents stumble into this without those bits of information, the intel that's so important, and then the training that's also so critical to get through these years, which are the most important years, I believe, in a child's life. People say it's years 1 through 5, certainly critical, important. I argue 13 to 18. Because now they can think, as you've noticed. They say no. They say why. And they say that's stupid. They're thinking for themselves. And now you're dealing with shaping their beliefs, which is really what the game is all about.
Yeah, that is powerful. I love that idea of intel and not fighting the new war with the old rules.
Yeah. Intel and training.
Yes, the training. Absolutely.
So I'm wondering, Dr. Mike, if you could share, what do you think is the most challenging, stress-inducing, crazy-making aspect of life that our teens are currently dealing with in this day and age?
I can hear the parents who are listening into this podcast leaping out of their chairs and saying, the screens, the phones, the video games. And they're right. When we do the research, boiling it down, ultimately, what we find is that the stressors are essentially the same as we all dealt with. Teenagers were always having a hard time with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll stuff. Rock and roll meaning violence and bullying and so forth. Those things have been there since forever. Those are age-old stressors we all dealt with. But when I'm coaching the parents, I say, yeah, you guys dealt with muskets with those issues. Your kids are dealing with machine guns because the technology has taken those stressors and just exploded them in terms of effectiveness, dosing rates, machine gun fire versus a musket, just poundings, 20 hours a day. Kids are on their screens now, which is crazy on its own. Getting these, we call them cultural prompts, suggestions to do sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that pounding, that incessant pounding, does change teen behavior, at least temporarily. And we found that in a lot of studies. So the screens have really changed the whole dynamic of raising teenagers. And that has happened like almost an overnight switch.
Yeah, as parents, we really didn't have a lot of time to prep for that.
Yeah, we just ran into a friend at the store recently who has, I think, 9 kids. And one of the comments she made as we were just talking about raising all these kids, she was making the point that, you know what, I think raising my oldest 2 is like radically different than raising my younger 2. And they're all in the same family. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's really right.
Mm-hmm.
Bingo. And the complexity just goes on and on. We always said every kid's a different book. You've probably seen that too. But now we have this added piece, this, 3-dimensional chess game with the new technology and this new culture they're dealing with that is pounding at them. So yeah, this is the most difficult challenge most of us are ever going to have. Also the most important.
Yeah.
People say flying the jet plane, whatever. No, that's easy. Being a parent in today's day and age is the most difficult and I think the most important thing any of us will ever do.
Yeah.
You mean parenting doesn't have an autopilot?
We're working on an AA version right now, but it's not up to snuff yet.
There you go. Yeah.
So on top of the technology and all the stressors out there, our kids are dealing with underdeveloped brains. And you talk a lot about that in this first part of the book. Can you give us a snapshot of what's going on in the brain of our adolescents and teenagers in terms of just the natural development, but also around this concept that you refer to in the book as the internal brain battles? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. When kids are growing in pre-adolescence, they're actually pretty simple to deal with. They can be challenging. We had a special needs child ourselves, and I thought that was a lot of work until she became a teenager, because that's when all this kind of hits the fan. In early adolescence, through adolescence, is a miracle. Mother Nature takes what is essentially, no offense, a smart puppy's brain of a young child. They're sort of easy to fool and con and reward, so forth. And then suddenly gives it incredible powers in overnight. Some parents say she is a different child than yesterday, I swear to God. And there's a lot of truth to that. What's going on is Mother Nature renovates that child brain into an adult brain, a grown-up's brain, with amazing capabilities to think and have future plans, to have future constructs, to care about a time in the future that doesn't exist. So all that is miraculous and really important to functioning. However, Mother Nature also plays this great joke because she starts that brain renovation in the back of the head, an area with a set of circuits we call the child brain, which is essentially operates on a 3-year-old level. That's our emotional center. That's where our feelings are. And in adolescence, that another joke, thanks Mother Nature, coincides with puberty. So for all the kids, that coincides with sexual urges, with all sorts of other urges that are related, such as dominance, control, power, and the male's aggression, testosterone influxes, and girls have these urges they didn't have before to organize, to socialize. Men and women there are differences. Women tend to work in groups more. Men tend to be more comfortable being the solo warrior. As couples, it's a great combination. But in early adolescence, the males can express it as sexual conquests, bullying, physical dominance, aggression, and the females often express that socialization thing as another form of bullying, of social hierarchies, queen bee stuff, mean girl stuff, which is devastating. I got bullied in middle school, high school, and I thought I had it rough till my wife told me her stories of growing up. And oh my God, I'd rather get punched in the face and locked in the locker than what the girls can do. It's devastating and very subtle, and they use these emotional stilettos on each other that are really powerful. So it's devastating. This is hitting these kids, all those very powerful things, just at the time where their smart brain, we call the adult brain, is not developing. So that's mostly in the front of the head, those structures. And that's an amazing piece of work. That's the brain that can see the future, plan for the future. Most importantly to this discussion, regulate the child brain to say, let's chill. I want to punch this guy in the face, but that's not going to turn out well. I'll get expelled. What else can I do? But that doesn't happen till later. So if you think about somebody that, has this magnificent Ferrari engine, whatever, 800 horsepower, just unbelievable power. And they built this vehicle with a 1990 Kia transmission and brake system. So that's what you've got, this incredible power and very little regulation. They can get to 150 miles an hour real fast, but they can't brake. They can't rein it in and say, wait a minute, let me think about it. So that's where things go really south. And that's where the titles of the books came from. Parents saying my kid is crazy, but also the kids saying, I think I'm crazy. They won't tell us that as their parents because we're the opposition. Your management, their labor. It's supposed to be a conflict. We'll talk about that later. But when they get to my office, if I'm able to connect with them, when they were just screaming at their parents, it's all your fault. And then they walk in my door and say, it's all my fault. Something's wrong with me. I need medicine. I'm bipolar. I'm schizophrenic. And so everybody's on edge. Everybody's tense and at their worst. And we all tend to be reactive when that's happening. It gets better. A phrase, a little brutal again, alive at 25. And we say 25 because that's sort of the most of the end of male maturity. The females you notice they're always smarter than the boys their age. So girls start down this path a little bit ahead of the boys. So the idea is to play the game skillfully. Don't get hung up on short-term behaviors. For most of us, it'll be fine. Terrifying, but you'll get through it. And you're just kind of surviving till, 25 at the outside. Typically, it gets a heck of a lot better after that.
Wow, what a great description. I love the analogy there of the Ferrari brain on the Kia chassis as well. That totally
the old
makes
Kia.
sense.
No offense to the new Kias.
Hey, we've got a Kia, so we're good. I get it. I totally get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. It's funny as you were describing that. I was thinking about it was only a few years ago that our kids were, in that construction. Well, actually, they're still in that construction phase. They haven't quite reached 25 yet. And I just thought, man, how many times did I slip into that crazy brain moment, even though I'm well beyond 25? And, my tendency in those really tough moments is to be that parent who wants to move toward control. And there's a whole story behind that, my own family of origin experiences and all of that kind of thing. And so I have this tendency to want to control my teenagers. You talk about the benefits of raising resilient kids by training them to control themselves versus attempting to take control over them. I wonder if you could maybe expand on that just a little bit. Like where could I do better as dad if I can step away from control?
First, understand what I'm about to say is really easy to say, really hard to do. In my garage, I have a set of cabinets, and the inside of one of the cabinets has a hole in it that incredibly matches the exact outline of my fist, because I would get so upset and I would revert back to my training, Irish Catholic father, grandfather, which is you knock them out, you knock them to the floor. And I would have to walk away and hit something else. I left that hole in the cabinet. I never fixed it because it helps me be humble and remember, hey, we all screw up. This is very hard stuff I call it special forces parenting. It's another level of challenge than parents did in the days before. So, what is the concept? It is parenting for the long game, not the short game. The short game is to control your kids. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're a good person. Most of us very much love our children. We would take a bullet for them. Just run into the burning house. Not a question. The problem is we take that and then we kind of go to our 3-year-old brain to express it. And that's where our love for our kids translates into fear when we see all they're dealing with and, things they're doing, and you're wondering, are horrible things happen to my child? And they are often. And then we kind of translate that into an anger and control, not because we're horrible people, because we're terrified and we didn't get training. And it's very much, again, sorry, a military metaphor. You got to get the training or you're not going to get through what's out there. So we train the parents by starting first with the parents' belief system. What do you want? Do you want a kid that does what you tell them to do 24/7? The military dream. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. And they salute and walk away and do what you said. Did they learn anything? Well, they learned that you're in charge. That's a very short-term game. The long-term game is to have that child as a young adult, as an adult, be fine when we ain't around anymore. And sooner or later, we leave the planet. We're not there. And that's really our job, is to think about who will this person be at 25, 35, 45 when their own kids are making them crazy. How will this parent then react? So the long game is different. That's where we take calculated risks, where we give as much decision-making power to our child as we can. And we have a mantra about that, which is the good decision made poorly is not as effective as the bad decision made well. What's that mean? If you bully your kid into doing what you think is the best thing for them, and this could be choosing courses at school, joining or quitting activities, or managing their boyfriends and girlfriends, doing that stuff, you may pull it off, but there's no learning. I find, if you think about your own lives, parents that are listening, what was your best learning? When I get together with the old crew, sometimes they'll say, Mike, remember when you did this thing? It was really cool. And I say, I did? That was amazing. No, you did that. I don't remember that. But I'll tell you about my failures in exquisite detail. I have them tattooed inside my forehead so I can look at them and say, wow, that really sucked. Don't do that again. Things where I was doing self-learning, making my own decisions, didn't kill me, but I learned a hell of a lot. Yeah. And that's the balance we have to pull off with our kids, letting them take risks, hopefully that won't kill them, not make them pregnant, not get them addicted to heroin. Yeah. But we have to fight our own loving urge to control them and step back and say things like, well, you may want to think about it, but hey, you're a young lady now, young woman now, you'll have to make that decision. You're growing up, so we'll go with your call on this. Not every decision, obviously, but as much as you can. That makes parents crazy. when my son Ross announced he wasn't going to do social studies anymore because he discovered it was a white man's conspiracy. And he points to me at the dinner table, guys like you doing mind control on teenagers like me. So he quit social studies. I'm not going to participate. Cindy and I looked at each other. My wife, we value education very much. She's a teacher. And we kept our discipline. So, well, you decide. But understand, if you do this, if you refuse to cooperate with the social studies teacher, you're going to handle the consequences. Fair. We're not going to bail you out. We're not going to argue your case. It's up to you. You handle it. And he said, all right. Well, at the end of the semester, teacher calls us in, says, I just need to tell you, if I did this by the numbers, your son would be getting an F in social studies. And Cindy said, is that what he earned? Teacher said, yeah. And he said, okay, then that's fine by us. Teacher put his pencil down and said, I've been teaching 20 years. No parents ever came in here and not argue for a better grade for their kid. Right. And we looked at each other and said, oh my God. So of course, Ross was waiting for us. We get home. He said, what's the teacher say? Teacher said, he loves you. You're a great guy. He says, you're smart as heck. And you got an F for the semester. You're out of the gifted track. That's it for the rest of high school. And he said, what? I can't believe you didn't say it. I said, Ross, we made the deal, right? And he went and he wrote this great paper over the weekend, rushed it in, defending his thesis that it's mind control conspiracy by rich white men like me, and handed it to the teacher. Teacher read it, end of the day, said, Ross, this is brilliant. I'd like to submit this to my journal, and Ross said, great. Then I get an A. And the teacher said, no, son, you still get an F. I didn't ask for this. It's great. But I want you to know, you got to do what the teachers say, man. Yeah. Ross now has 2 master's degrees and does all sorts of things.
But he learned a great lesson.
Game, right. But we had to give up our need to control him into making a smart academic decision. Yeah. And that's where parents go off the track. You don't play the game for 13, even 18. You're playing the game for 25. Yeah. Right. And that means they have to decide and handle the consequences.
Yeah. And that's what you just described is actually your strategy number 5, which is think resilience in every parenting decision and discussion. So you're teaching your children to be resilient by allowing them to make a bad decision. Yeah. That actually teaches them something good.
It's interesting, Dr. Mike, I have this kind of dual thought that's going in as I'm reviewing just all the years we've been raising our kids. And I'm in a position of being both a bio parent and a step parent. And when I walked in, and our listeners are blending families, a lot of step parents listening. And when I walked into the scene, I felt like there was chaos going on. And what does somebody wired like me want to do when there's chaos? Like, we got to get control of this situation.
Fix it.
So what might you say to a step parent to help them kind of start onboarding this idea of playing the long game when what they're really focused on is, I need some comfort now.
I need to get out of my pain.
Well, boy, that's a broad question. Excellent
it is.
Question. First part of that is, what we were just talking about is the routine for parents that are not in blended families. They're dealing with their own bio kids or adopted kids. You take the blending thing, now you've taken parenting and moved it into the playoffs because it becomes another set of 3D chess challenges. So many factors swirling in there. And usually the males have this need to control the chaos. Don't feel bad. That's genetic. It's just a difference. That's your job. And that's great if you're a cop but a firefighter, not as a parent. If the chaos is not life-threatening, again, you got to, go punch a hole through your garage door cabinet and then come back in and let it roll without somebody getting bloody noses, no weapons. But it's interesting what happens when you let it roll. People start to say things they haven't been saying and should have been saying. They say them explosively, sometimes terrible language and insults and so forth. But you have to remember, these people are not psychotic or schizophrenic. The emotion is not coming out of nowhere. There's a method to the madness. So the conflict, the outbreak, sets the stage for some growth, resolution. Sometimes you learn about timing. And when it gets to a certain point, then you just call the time out. And it's something we coach with families. Everybody has the ability to do the T sign, the horizontal hand over the vertical. So anybody can call the T sign, which means everybody goes to their corners and get back together later. So you can have the explosion, which is therapeutic, more so than the silence. Then after there's the bloodletting, whatever, you wait till there's the pause and you hear the panting or the sniffling or crying. Then you say to everybody, believe it or not, thanks for saying all that stuff. I'd like to suggest we all, take a 30-minute break, maybe get some coffee, whatever. And then can we get back together and see how we may want to say those things differently?
Yeah.
And that's so you don't stamp down the chaos, because if you rush in like the brutal cop with your billy club, you're just postponing it. It's going to go underground. They can get more deadly. When kids have these explosions, if you can ride it through, just contain it a bit, nobody's at risk. But and for parents, it's often when the child is screaming at the parent. You're a blah, blah, blah. You're not my father. And, my father was a real dad. He's not a horrible dad. Like all that, they'll go to the worst insults they can think of. That's what a 3-year-old does. It's just, you have to learn to sidestep that, to listen and nod and affirm their emotion. They're trying to say something. They're lousy at doing that yet because they don't have the brakes online, the adult brain to help them do this. But the fact that they put it out, even though poorly and hurtfully, that's good. Okay, thanks. Let them puke is the phrase, a pretty picture, right? But you want them to puke out the pain. You can clean it up later. You can say, let's clean this up and let's get back to what was causing you to puke? What were you eating that made you sick? What can we learn from this? What can I do to help you with this? And that's the greatest discipline. When we lose it, and I would lose it, believe me, ex-military, ex-Irish Catholic, I can put on a rage. I can beat your rages any day. I am really good at that. You should see it. But that's when we become another teenager. And we actually lose respect points. Think about cops, we teach that in the book too, be the dispassionate cop. If you blow up at a cop, if the cop then threatens you and gets in your face, pulls out his gun or whatever, okay, you're going to shut up. But you have a picture of the cop as frightening, brutal, not a dude you're going to, share your deepest fears with. And another cop, you blow up at her and she says, sir, nobody's disrespecting you. It's okay. It's just a traffic ticket. We'll get through this. Take some breaths. She doesn't take it personally. She steps to the side and has empathy for you, saying, the guy's probably had a rough day. Tickets really suck. But he doesn't really mean that I'm a fascist or whatever you yelled at her. Right. It's just, that's what we do when we're stressed. When we pull that off with our kids, when they unload their best on us and we just kind of make ourselves small, and for dads, I mean physically, drop your shoulders because we all start to muscle up, it's almost flexing in front of the kid. When we resist that urge and just become small and listen, just as they're raging, and nod and say things like, I would hate me too. Yeah, son, I get that. Blended families are tough. Yeah, I can hear that. Yeah. What can I do better to help you with that? Not how the hell do you think you can talk to me like that? You just sidestep all that. We never look better. Moms and dads, particularly dads, we never look bigger to our kids than when we look smaller. Than when we take this step back and show them they can't get at us with insults, words, threats. that is very comforting and instructing to them. It's not what they see in their worlds. Take a cruise around their worlds. All you see is uncontrolled rage and self-centeredness, and it's really horrifying. But to see somebody step back and maintain their cool, they want to be like that. A lot of us are hung up on the word respect in blended families in particular, that you're not my mother, you're not my father. And we fall for that bait. We go for it. It's better to say things like, yeah, you're right, I am not. And that must be really hard for you. I'm so sorry that you have to deal with that. That must be rough. Tell me about it. What is that like for you? See, respect is not something to be demanded. When I was in the military, I got off the helicopter, brand new second lieutenant, knew nothing, thought I was going to fix the world. And a sergeant literally grabbed me by my shirt and took me behind this hut. And he says, you are going to listen to me for the first 30 days you're here. You're going to do what I tell you to do. His language was more colorful. The men are going to watch you, and they're going to figure out who you are, what you're about. And at the end of that time, if they judge you can handle this, you will have earned their respect. But that yellow thing on your shoulder, it's the insignia of the rank, that doesn't mean a thing. Again, he used a lot of colorful language. I'll spare your folks that. And it was a lightning bolt for me. It's not, you don't get it because you're a parent.
Right.
You don't get their respect. You got to earn it the hard way. And what's the hard way? That's being there, showing up. Most of all, retaining your cool under fire. And just saying, it really sucks. I feel so bad. It must be really hard for you. What can I do to help? You earn the respect. Then you earn the right to meddle in their lives, make decisions. But you always be sure you've got that respect first. And by the way, when you blow Dr. Bradley's excellent advice and you blow up at your kid, it's okay. It's another learning window. I believe we're built to be imperfect. The perfect parent is not as effective as the imperfect parent who apologizes. So when, not if, for me, it's when I blow up next. I go back, knock on the door. Son, can I come in? Yeah. What just happened down there? That was not about you and what you did last night. That was me, man. I lost it. I am so freaking sorry. I'm working on it. No excuses. Thanks for listening. And you walk out. You don't wait for the counter apology. Apology does not have the word but in it. Doesn't have the phrase, you got to understand. Those are rationalizations or explanations. That's not the deal. If we try lecturing to our kids about things like owning their behaviors, wrestling with imperfection, striving to do better, right? Word 3, you see the deflector shields go up. They're not hearing a word. But when we go in and apologize the way I just described, we are owning our behavior and we are not excusing it. We are wrestling with imperfection and we promise to strive to do better. Wow, their eyes are wide open. They can't help but take it in because you're not talking about them. You're talking about you. And that's a sneaky way of getting this stuff in them. Parents hate hearing this, the dads. And there's dad's disease. When I lecture on this stuff around the country, I always have a dad argue. And I like it when they argue, by the way, telling me the truth, to stand up and say, this is BS. My father slapped me around and my coach slapped, and my drill sergeant slapped me around, and they were good men. They made me who I am today. And I say, that's great. Tell me a bit about your father. So far, every time I get the following sort of story. The old man worked 2 jobs to get us through school, coached everything, never had a decent pair of shoes in his life, took care of the widow's family down the street. And I said, thank you for sharing that. What a wonderful story. Sir, you just told me about your father's values, his character, what I call his heart. Wow, amazing. I can see why you turned out well. Sir, you never mentioned the hitting. You never mentioned the screaming. You forgave the hitting, the screaming, forms of violent control. you forgave that or overlooked that in light of the man's character. The hitting and screaming only diminishes that.
Yeah.
Sorry for the long answer, but
no, that was really good,
okay.
and such a powerful observation there. You know, a couple things I heard in there. One, you'll never be bigger than when you're small.
Yep.
I could have used that 12 years ago.
Yeah, me too.
For sure. Yeah. And I love that observation about respect as well. We hear that from almost every couple how do we increase respect in our home? What makes me as a stepdad think that I'm going to gain respect by being disrespectful? I haven't figured that one out yet. Yeah. But the more I can actually settle in and get focused on the long game and keep myself in check and under control, the more I'm actually modeling what I'm asking for, and probably the better chances of getting it is going to be around the corner.
That's the way. That's it.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. I would love to jump into this story you talk about in the book. I love the stories, by the way, your personal stories of you growing up and you parenting your kids, and then your the kids that you work with and their parents. There was one story in there that, like, I was in tears. It was so moving, and I so related to the pain of the parent. But there's one story you tell of a mom who is divorced. She's got her 14-year-old daughter in your office. They're having a big heated argument right there in front of you. And a divorced mom has had some pretty big losses. Just to set the stage, her husband suddenly walked out on her, moved away, taking 3 of their other kids with him.
Oh, yeah.
And he was party dad, right? Lets them do whatever they wanted. So there's big differences in the parenting there. So now she's got this remaining child, this 14-year-old daughter who has chosen to stay with mom. And she's now demanding that mom be cool and give her permission to go on an unsupervised co-ed trip to Cancun for spring break with 8 friends ranging from age 14 to 18. Oh,
ding, 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 ding.
Oh my gosh.
What's wrong with all that?
I'm reading this story and I'm just glued to the book going, what is going to happen? And I think we can all relate to that, you know, and to make it worse, daughter announces that, oh, well, dad's already given me permission and is actually paying for the trip. And you just have to say, you know, it's okay. Be cool. So poor mom's been set up, you know, now she's going to be, you know, the villain if she says no. And then the 14-year-old girl escalates in the story and she starts throwing out all kinds of threats. If you don't let me go, I'm moving in with dad. I'll never talk to you again. And then she, you know, she's throwing bombs left and right at this poor mom. I mean, so much pressure, right, for mom to cave. I'm just putting myself in her shoes going, oh, what did she do? You know, just be cool. Just cave in, be cool, let her go. Yep. But even though this mom knows this trip is a really bad idea, and I'm sure she's struggling with that feeling that we all struggle with of, I would not be a responsible parent if I allowed this to happen. But then she's got this kid in her face just berating her and just going at it. And then the brave mom gathers herself to give her response, and you share it in the book. It's amazing. What you say is she showed what she was made of. Mm-hmm. And she uses a phrase that we use a lot with our kids of, I love you too much to let you go down this road, which is a great one. She held her ground. She was loving and firm in her response, which we love. And you'll have to get the book and read it if you want to hear the full response. It was amazing. And then, of course, mom and you found yourself on the receiving end of this child screaming, you know, I'll hate you forever, and explosive behaviors. And she storms out of your office. And mom's left there sobbing, and she's concerned. She says to you, I'm losing my last child. And at this point in the book, you say something really interesting to her. You turn to her and say, no, you're not losing her. You're gaining that child. Your daughter's just crazy. She's not stupid, and she gets it.
I love that.
Tell us more about this tactic. I know. Tell us more about this. Be cool with not being cool. What are the benefits here? Like, what is going on here with this child?
Well, you left out two critical points. Was one, the mom looked at me in the middle of the raging to make the decision to, if I'm recalling the right story, I think it was Becky. And,
Yep.
and mom looks at me, in the depths of her despair. And I did the shrug, we call it, like, hey, it's not my kid. Thank God. You're going to have to make the call. And she gave me the look like, what am I paying you all this money for? But that's again like a metaphor for kids. Like, if I made the call, I'm not doing anybody any favors, and it wouldn't work anyway. So, and by the way, Becky did demo my office, as I recall, kicked over the table and my glass candy bowl shattered. It was quite and then she's out screaming in the parking lot. Do I remember that part right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And all the other docs are coming in an office. Somebody's getting hatcheted to death in the parking lot. By the way, when she ran out screaming, mom got up to, I don't think I wrote this part, mom was going to chase her. I just said, just sit. And Becky would go far enough into the parking lot so we could hear her screaming, but she didn't take off down the highway. And it was, again, she was still involved in protest, if you will, and working the mom, waiting for mom to beg her to calm down and give her what she wanted. So yeah, that's it rolls into the part where, again, we have to be the dispassionate cop, set our own feelings aside. Mom was thinking she would lose her. This was the last child because dad was a real player. He was good, and he was more interested in hurting her. We'll spare all those details. Not a good person. Than caring for the kids.
Right.
And of course, kids being kids, they'll take advantage of that. They'll go for the candy bowl. They'll go for the big allowance and the trips and so forth. But kids are crazy at that time in adolescence. They're not stupid. They do get it. The kids will see that manipulative parent as another teenager. And Becky knew. And it turned, she actually said this later in subsequent sessions. Mom was the grown up. And she said, I need a grown up. Dad's not a grown up.
Wow.
Yeah. So they want to be soloing in Cancun all by themselves. And they know that's a ridiculous idea and it could kill them at the same time. So that's the brain storm that's going on inside their heads that we have to have the empathy for, not cave into, not say, okay, get whatever you want. But as you guys said, the mantra should be, we love you too much. And to say, I get it, Becky, I would hate me too. Absolutely. And to affirm the horrible language and destroying Dr. Bradley's office and so forth, saying, I get it. This is, who wouldn't at 14? How about you guys? How about Kim and Mike? Would you want? Yeah, right. So,
Right.
Absolutely. Go.
Talk about puking up pain.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
She went for it.
Exactly. But just trusting in the concept of love, the ultimate concept, loving somebody enough to risk losing them because you care for them that much, that you would protect them, also help them to grow, but not have your needs take dominance and make the decision. It's funny because, I had with my daughter when she was 16, we had the same scene almost. Nature's revenge, I guess. And she was on the steps arguing to go down to the seashore near us, again, with kids we didn't know and bad news situation. And I followed the drill and I said no. She's a rugby player. She knows about leverage. So she goes to the stairs to continue the screaming to get a height advantage. So she's eye to eye with me now. And she's going on and you're ruining my life. Everybody else is going, you've probably heard this once or twice. And everybody else is cool with this. I said, Sarah, love you too much. Terrible things can happen. Just can't go with this one. Do something else. Have the kids come here, work out a party, but can't do that one. And she started screaming. And I said, Sarah, I'm not going to fight with you on this. The answer is no. I'm sorry. The answer is no. And when I said, I'm not going to fight with you, she leaned down to go nose to nose with me. This is a rugby player now. And she screamed so loud the neighbors could hear it. That's because you're an effing. And she used the P word. Don't mean to offend anybody.
Sure.
It's echoing through the neighborhood.
Wow.
And three things flashed through my mind in a nanosecond. One was, how did she know that was an issue of mine? I got bullied as a kid. It's largely why I went in the military, was, to prove I wasn't a P word. It's embarrassing, but true. Yeah. It's just, and come home and beat everybody else up or something. In any event, how did she know that she had somehow knew that was a thing of mine I never told her about? And second, how did she know she could trigger that in me? That I could then start screaming or punch her or something, which is where it was headed. So my second reaction was, what do I do? How do you handle this? And this is in a nanosecond. And the third was humor. And it just hit me. This is so funny. This is Dr. Bradley. I read about these stories, and here it is. Okay, big guy, what are you going to do? And it just struck me as funny. And I laughed and I said, Sarah, hate to tell you this, you're not the first person to call me that name. But the answer's still no. Love you, kiddo. And she went insane up the stairs and demolished her room. Another trick. Try to step out of the scene for a minute as if you're watching an episode of, whatever on TV. It's funny. There's a humorous thing to these terrors. But if you step out of it and see them for what they are, it's just part of the game. It's just the way we all get through this. And most importantly, the way kids learn. Yeah. And that was where I won one. And that helped me feel so much better. And Mom and Dad, I think we all know how terrible we feel when we lose it. It's a terrible feeling. But when we hold our cool, it's a wonderful feeling to ride out the storm.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
I'm just curious, if we go back to Becky and her mom for a minute, what would have been the outcome if Mom had just caved and been the cool mom and said, fine, go? What would have been the impact for the child not having an adult parent?
Yeah.
The kids get terrified. They never tell you that, but they know they're crazy. They're not ready to solo. And it terrifies them when the parents hand them these things that they know are bad. It makes them feel hopeless. It makes them feel nobody really loves them enough to lovingly conflict with them. Parenting, sorry guys, it's a conflict-based relationship. It's just the nature of it. But that's okay. It's all part of the plan. Kids learn from it. They're learning not just how to be a child in a family, even a blended family, but think about the implications for the rest of Becky's life. How will she manage conflict with her life partner one day, with her own children one day? And to model real love, which is taking a beating, not raging back, but holding the moral ground, just saying, sorry, kiddo, I love you too much. And there's nothing you can do to make me stop loving you. That's the other thing you'll hear from the kid when you say, you love me, I love you too much. Well, stop loving me. Say, sorry, kiddo, you're not that powerful. I hate to tell you this. You can't get that. I mean, you can tell me horrible things. You can make me scared. You can make me cry. You can't make me stop loving you. That will never happen. It's just not going to go away. So you can leave us. You can run away. That would break our hearts. Absolutely. But we're never walking on you. That's not going to happen. We're here forever. So we're going to have to work it out somehow.
It's really funny. I love that just thought of, kids not being able to solo, them recognizing this. I don't know why I think of this story. You can cut this out if you want, honey, but I think about my grandma used to tell me a story about, she was maybe 10 years old, something like that. And so this would have been, 1930s, somewhere in there. And she got real mad at her mom one day, and she was raging. She was just a youngster, and I'm leaving. I'm never living here again. And so my great grandma, in her wisdom, said, all right, well, what do you think you're going to need? And they went around the house and they got a few things, a little toothbrush and, a little snack, and kind of like you would see in a cartoon. She got a little stick and a kerchief and hung it on the end of the stick. And my Nana walked out the door with this little thing. And I said, Nana, what did you do? And she said, well, I just kind of walked around the block a few times and then I went back home. And I'm like, well, why'd you do that? She says, well, I wasn't allowed to cross the street.
There you go.
And that makes me really think about this cute little, microcosm of a broader perspective of what you're saying. Like at the core, kids really do know that they need mom and dad.
Yes.
And when we let them hijack us, it actually is to their detriment and ultimately to that long-term, the relationship that we really want with them. And so we've got to learn how to handle our cool at that point. Yeah.
They need us and then hate us because they need us.
Yeah,
because we're a representation of their own yet unfulfilled inadequacies. Yeah. And they'll get there. But they're supposed to hate us. You accept that at times. I know parents say they can't use the hate word. Well, first of all, good luck trying to stop them from using a word. Write to me if you figure that out. But, we don't have that kind of power. But secondly, it works so much. It's jujitsu. You sort of you deflect their energy, accept their energy to your jaw. You deflect, you move aside and maintain your position. And it's very similar to that. So you just affirm it. Yeah, I'd hate me too. I get that. It's okay. You're allowed to hate me, but you can't go to Cancun. Sorry.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. You call it rage-free conflict. A proper dose of rage-free conflict can be therapeutic for kids and builds heaps of resilience.
It sure does. That, okay, because I'm in a conflict doesn't mean I go to war. How about if we sit down and talk?
Exactly.
Could you just describe that just briefly a little bit more? Because I can hear some listeners thinking, wait, rage-free conflict, but you just talked about this teenager who's raging. How is that rage-free? Can you maybe just describe that a little bit?
Great point. Rage-free on our part. It's not a game of rage. There can be one partner raging, and that's fine. Again, sorry, but rage is a form of truth. Yeah. If I stub my bad toe again, you'll see me rage. It's sorry. I'll scream and yell, and I'm feeling this pain. I'm letting it out. But if my wife starts screaming at me, you're such a baby, now we got a problem. But if she says, that must have really hurt, I'm already calming down.
Yeah.
So you sidestep the rage stuff. The less attention you pay to your kid's rage, the less of it you will see. The more you react to the rage and try to control it, yell back, you're feeding the monster. It goes in the opposite direction.
Yep.
So when I say rage-free, that's a great point. I should clarify that. I'm talking about both sides raging, but take the rage out of yourself while your kid is raging.
I think it's helpful for me when my child is raging to remember that, okay, they're in their C brain, their child brain. They're acting like a 3-year-old, and that's all right. That's where their brain is at right now. And I'll just wait until we can calmly talk to the A brain later.
I think you have to do that with me sometimes too.
Welcome to the club. And the other trick is we say, paint that 3-year-old brain on that 13-year-old face. That's
Yeah.
what you're dealing with at times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's helpful to think of it that way and just realize that, okay, there's stuff going on.
So
Right.
I'm curious. So there's step parents and parents who are listening to this now, and they listen to this story about Becky, and they listen to this moment Dr. Mike's been able to keep his cool and find some humor while these teenagers are just raging, and they're going, okay, you've got the intel, you've done the training, and that's where you are. But I'm way back as a beginner. Like, I'm just starting this journey of this kind of parenting. In fact, maybe you're listening to this discussion right now, and this is kicking off a new point of training for you. What do you say to that parent who's like, okay, I don't have that advanced training? Where is their starting point? What's the first thing they can do this week to just start training?
The key, when we look at when you get into the science of resilience in the book, we talk about different factors. The most important key is something called connection. I work with disabled vets, and back when we were into the terrible wars, we had all the traumatic amputees. I got called for one case. They said, can you take on a case here? This guy lost his leg. He's promising to kill himself at the first opportunity. He's refusing to see anybody. He won't cooperate with any treatment, so forth. And it makes sense to me. That's the way I would have reacted if that happened to me, which it did not. And so I get that. The key part was he was refusing to see anybody, refusing his family, refusing the other vets, that self-help groups. And then a couple of years later, I got a call. They said, we got another traumatic amputee. The guy lost a leg. I said, oh, he won't get out of bed. They said, no, get this. We can't keep him in bed. He's doubling his own physical therapy. He's constantly on the move, seeing everybody. He's formed these self-help groups. He greets the new guys and women coming into the hospital at the door. He would get called, oh, we got a newbie coming in, and say, hey, we're here. We're your brothers and sisters. We'll get you through this. We're a family, yada, yada. Anyway, they call me in because they're worried that he's not reacting the way he usually would react, that something was up. I go to see him. He's annoyed. I'm wasting his time. He says, I know why you're here. I said, why am I here? And he said, well, you think that I'm avoiding my pain by all the stuff I do. And I said, well, the thought crossed my mind. And he said, dude, I feel the pain. I feel the freaking pain. I wake up in the middle of the night puking from pain in a leg I don't have anymore, something called phantom pain. I said, I feel the pain. He said, but I gave that war my leg. I'm not giving it another inch of my life. So if you want to help me, get the VA guy in here, because I want that runner's prosthetic. I don't want the walker. I want to be a runner again. So what was the difference between the two? Connection. One isolated, imploded, refused to talk, refused to see people who loved him, other people who were similar to him, his brothers and sisters in arms. The second one did the inverse, was constantly connecting, building connections. Connections are this weird lifeline, love line between human beings. We can't measure it. We can't get a device that picks it up, but damn if I don't see it when it walks in the door. You can see it and feel it. It's palpable. And it keeps people going through terrible times. So if parents are saying, I don't, have all that sophisticated training, I would say, pick the 1C about connection. And that's where you might start with, even before the rages hit, to sit down with a child you're talking the blended situation where you're the stepper, where you might say, I just wanted to tell you, dude, I was thinking this must be really hard for you. And maybe it hasn't hit you now, it may later, but if I were you, I'd be saying, hey, you're not my father. You're my mother's boyfriend. You're not my father. I would have a big problem with this. Just want to let you know. What are you doing? You're showing the key to connection, which is something called empathy. And empathy is a martial arts skill. It's really hard. You got to work at it. Empathy is not listening to somebody to figure out if what they say makes sense. It's actually listening to somebody, not to see if it makes sense to you, but how does it make sense to them, which is a trick. Worked with a kid in a hospital that, terrible story, but he would burn cats, and crazy, horrible, and that's in the book somewhere, I think, or another book. But the bottom line was, I wanted to punch him in the face because we had just put down the loved cat in the family, and my daughter was crying, blah, blah, blah. And I walk in, he's telling me this is what he likes to do in a group setting. That day I held on to my empathy, martial arts skill, not easy, not a soft skill, and said, all right, somehow this makes some sense to this crazy kid. And by doing that, asking him questions, I said, can I ask, what do you get out of this? And he described the horrific scene. I said, got it. What about that gives you a good feeling or something? He says, there's nothing they can do. They're trapped and they're in all this pain and they're in the alley and they can't move. And I had noticed he had these facial scars. I didn't know him. I hadn't even read his file yet. And I said, thanks for telling me about that in a group. I said, can I ask you a final question? And he yelled, you can ask me any other question you want. I said, thanks. Last question. Man, did anybody ever make you feel like that? And his eyes flew open. It was a lucky shot in the dark. Doesn't happen too often. But then it made sense. And he had been in 8 foster homes and tortured. Scarring was boiling water that was poured on him or something. Yeah. So, okay. This horrific insanity makes sense. There's a method in the madness. Then we could connect. I could say, dude, that makes sense to me now. Not saying it's okay. It's not okay. Right. And we got to figure out better ways to handle this. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that with me. Because the empathy was healing for him, beginning of his healing. And for me, because I wanted to punch him in the face and say, how could you do this? You're a horrible human being. You ought to be killed, blah, blah, blah. And it helped me feel better to not get lost in my own rage. So for the newbies, work on the connection, not control. We got to set up some rules here about it. Don't do that. Walk in and show the empathy. This must be really hard for you. Yeah. Tell me if you're willing to share, or if not, anytime. I'm here to listen, dude. Yeah. That's how you start down the path of building the respect. The rest is sort of easy, mostly common sense stuff. But that's the key if you ask me to identify one.
That's so good. So appreciate that. Connection, not control. That dovetails right into what one blended family expert, Patricia Pappernow, says the step parents' rule of thumb is connection, not correction.
Oh, really? I didn't hear her say. Oh, she stole it from me. No, I probably stole it from her. I probably
maybe
stole
you stole it from her. I don't know.
Exactly. We steal each other's stuff all the
time. Yeah, that's so good.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mike, for joining us today. This has just been an amazing conversation. I'm sure our listeners have just gleaned so much wisdom and insight. I would love to recommend this book to everyone out there listening. We didn't even get to part 3 of the book, which is really about the do's and don'ts of resilience parenting. And so practical, so helpful. But start at the beginning. Don't skip to the end. Start at the beginning and understand what's going on in their brains and their world. And I would just say, if you want the intel on becoming that special forces parent, go get the book. Yeah. It's just incredible.
And we'll be putting a link to the book in the show notes. So all you got to do is scroll down, click the link, and go grab your copy.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Mike.
Thank you, guys. This was fun. Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate you being on the show today.
Definitely. Dr. Mike, certainly we want to encourage people to go and grab a copy of the book. If somebody wanted to reach out to you directly, how do they do that?
Oh, absolutely. You go to my website. It's docmikebradley.com. Yep. And you can email me there. I think we have a lot of this stuff posted in clips or videos. Some of my seminars are floating around. I do a lot of training for parent groups, teacher groups, and stuff like that. And some of those are posted in various places, so they could search and hear a lot of this stuff there.
Great.
But also reach out to me directly. My email is there.
Wonderful. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes
there
as well.
There are some great videos out there. That's actually how I found the book, was through a video.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Well, again, Dr. Mike, thanks so much for spending this time with us. What a pleasure it is to have you join us. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
That's my pleasure, guys. Thank you.
We'll talk again soon.
Bye for now.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Wow, what a rich conversation. We are so grateful for Dr. Mike's openness, not only of the key things that he's learned as a therapist, but some of his personal parenting experiences and struggles navigating and surviving the teen years with his own kids as well.
Yes, we appreciate Dr. Mike, and we want to point out that what you just heard, it's really just scratching the surface of all that he offers in his book, called Crazy Stressed. We encourage you to check it out. It's a practical resource for training and equipping yourself for the teen years so that you can teach your kids and your stepkids how to control themselves through resiliency parenting and love them well, even when it appears that they've gone crazy, right? Dr. Mike helps you normalize that crazy behavior and understand what's really going on. And it'll give you practical strategies for navigating the challenges you're already facing or you may face in the coming years.
Yeah, you can face all kinds of challenges, things like rage and acting out, experimenting with drugs and alcohol or using them regularly, the obsessive use of electronics, poor self-care habits, chronic stress and anxiety, even problems like at school or neglecting homework or things like sex and dating issues, social anxiety and bullying. Dr. Mike covers all of that in his book.
He does. He offers real help for parents and teens struggling with real issues. And you might recall when we asked Dr. Mike to identify what's the most challenging, stress-inducing, crazy-making aspect of life that our teens currently deal with? Well, he confirmed what most of us already suspected, the screens. In his book, he explores how the mix of neurology, technology, and powerful cultural changes have led to unprecedented stressors for our teens.
Yeah. And of course, all of that has led to unprecedented stress, confusion, and frustration for parents too.
Oh, yeah.
So we encourage you to grab your copy of Crazy Stressed and start discovering how to manage all the challenges that technology has created. And to make that simple, we're putting a link in the show notes. So just scroll down and click it and grab your copy.
Yeah, it's so good.
And make sure you tune in next week for our Simple Step bonus content. We're going to offer some healthy tech habits that you can implement now to help you protect your kids and reduce that stress.
That's right. You don't want to miss that. But remember, you'll need to follow the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to ensure you don't miss out on our Simple Step bonus content. So be sure to go ahead and do that and subscribe.
Again, we want to send a big shout out and a thank you to Dr. Mike for today's conversation. And that's going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.